Welcome to Flashback Friday. In this episode of the Radio Vagabond, you can join me where I meet Roger, who was born and raised in the Bahamas. He shares his story, talks about life on the island, and how he saw Hurricane Matthew. This one was first released in September 2018. Enjoy.
I'm from the Bahamas. Yeah, but you ain't sound like no Bahamian to me, you know. I said, well, I understand I may not sound like a Bahamian, but I'm third generation.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world. At the age of 50, he made a bold decision. He sold everything, his house, his car, his furniture, and set out with a quest to visit every single country in the world, documenting everything along the way. This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Roger is Bahamian, but he's from Nassau, the country's capital. He came to Grand Bahama back in 1967 for work, and he hasn't left since. He's living in a wonderful apartment at the waterfront in Freeport with his Cuban wife.
We've been married in October 10 years.
The squeaky toy is the dog?
Yeah, well, that's our little princess.
Yeah.
Cinnamon, no.
Grand Bahama is the northernmost of the islands of the Bahamas and the closest major island to the United States, lying only 52 miles off Palm Beach in Florida. It's the fourth largest of approximately 700 islands in the Bahamas. The island is about 95 miles long from west to east and 15 miles at the widest point from north to south. The biggest income of the Bahamas is tourism.
We've had a couple of hiccups, not the least of which is last year's hurricane.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew has given us a real setback. But about 95% of the income for the island comes from tourism. We do have large industrial companies here. One is Farm Chem, and they've just had they're undergoing a new $29 million expansion. We have another company here that produces styrofoam beads for the shipping packages. Everyone knows what those little beads are. Now, we used to have an oil refinery here, but now it's just pretty much a holding facility. The original oil refinery was called Bahamas Oil Refinery, but it's owned by Chevron. But the new owners are Buckeye, which is controlled by the Bush family, former presidents of the United States. Mm-hmm.
The biggest city in Grand Bahama is Freeport, with a lot of beautiful canals.
They're all man-made.
That must have been so expensive because there's so much.
Well, the canals weren't literally only man-made. A lot of these canals that we see today were low-lying areas that when it came high tide, the water would actually come into the area as a slough. And what they did was they came in and they dredged out these sloughs, piled it on top of the side to make the land higher, not only habitable, but sellable. Yeah. Of course, you now went to a waterfront home, going from a piece of property that's in the swamp to a lovely piece of waterfront property with a bulkheading on it. And like, for an example here, we're 5 minutes walk to the beach is right there.
Yeah, and right over the balcony, there's water. You could even have a boat down there.
Yes, I used to have a yacht down there when the early days.
Yeah. You are listening to the Radio Vagabond podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave a review in iTunes. If you're listening on an iPhone, you can actually do it right there within your podcast app. Roger is, at the age of 71, semi-retired, but he still makes a living from some property here.
I own property here that I rent, and I also have, my wife has a house in Cuba that I've developed a little bit, and we spend some time down there. We used to go together, but then, of course, now that we have the little dog, we take turns. She goes down and comes back, and I go down and I come back.
You can't bring the dog?
Actually, it's a strange situation because for some reason the government of the Bahamas is still in the same mindset as the government of the UK, except that you cannot bring a dog in from Cuba or Jamaica, any animal, actually. Even with papers, they will confiscate and euthanize the animal. They say that those countries do not take proper care of the animals, which is rather interesting since I have 2 dogs in Cuba and they're in the perfect health. They have all the medicine that we have here. In fact, it's cheaper in Cuba than here. I had a personal experience for the use of a bit of a light pot. My dog, they said I could not bring my Cuban dog to Freeport. So I didn't have a dog for 2 years. So then we came along, we had a friend of ours that had Cinnamon, her dog, which was Shih Tzu. She had a puppy, and Cinnamon we got. And Cinnamon has had better health care than many people I know. And but I go back and forth to Cuba, and everyone else that, whether ill or not, they go back and forth. And I called up and I wanted to take Cinnamon to Cuba and bring her back. That's our little, support dog. And the government said, you can take her down, but you can't bring her back. And I said, what are you talking about? This is not a Cuban dog. This is my Bahamian-born, bred, medicated. I've got all the records. We don't care. You bring her back, we euthanize her. They were very, very rude would be polite. I prefer to use the word rude rather than the real words that come to my mind.
Roger mentioned Hurricane Matthew that hit the area in October 2016. It was the first Category 5 Atlantic hurricane since Hurricane Felix in 2007 and caused catastrophic damage and devastation in Grand Bahama.
Well, the ironic thing about Matthew, I must say I'm very proud of my Bahamian people because I used to be in the water business. And for whatever reason, I guess because we'd never been really hit hard in Grand Bahama for many, many forever years, everyone took the hurricanes lightly. And that includes, I got hit in 1999 and I was put out of business for several months. And people were awful when it came to buying the water. They waited to the last minute. They were a little bit better in 2004, but not much. But this last hurricane, people seemed to be a lot better prepared, meaning they had their flashlights, they had their batteries, they had the water, they had supplies. Me personally, I was here, literally not in that chair because I've had to replace that other chair, in the apartment right here. And I have hurricane impact windows, so I didn't have to shutter on.
No, you don't need any shutters.
No. So I was able to watch the whole thing. We had cable TV and whatever. Unfortunately, when the power went out and I got my battery radio out, unfortunately it did not work. I got new batteries that did everything I was supposed to do, but unfortunately it had been corroded and worked. So I went for plan B and looked for another. I just couldn't find another battery-operated radio. So I had no cable, no power, no TV, but my mobile phone.
For how long?
I lost the TV early, like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Fortunately, I had friends of mine on the island that still had all facilities, and both of our landlines were working, so we're talking to each other on the landline. But then my landline went out a few hours later, but I still had my mobile, and my mobile worked straight through the whole time. So I had my niece in Nassau, who got hit first with Matthew coming up the chain of islands, and she had a generator, so she's a little bit more 21st century, but she has a house, and she had her own water and power and everything else. She kept me abreast. In fact, she even had her TV, cable, everything else, internet was still on, so she kept me fully abreast of the position of the storm. And of course my other friend who was here in the island, we kept in touch and whatever. My brother was calling me from Florida to say, by the way, it's going to get bad. All the sage advice that they could give me, I was following, to say the least.
You got off really lucky in this building, but tell me, what was it like the days after the storm here, and you saw how much damage it's done?
Well, I got lucky. We got lucky in this building because we didn't lose the roof itself. But what happened is where I'm located, this is northeast quadrant, of where the worst part of the winds were, and literally peeled off the water covering from the top, the tar paper, the felt, the whole bit. So you only had the plywood left, so whatever water came, it started seeping through. Worse than that, it tore off the siding, the northeast siding of the building. All of this siding was tore off. And so then the winds were, 80, 90, 100 mile an hour, and the water was coming in with the wind. Of course, it destroyed the master bedrooms and all the 6 units on the top. But the building next to us took a really bad hit. They lost, the part was completely caved in. The one across the parking lot from them at Island Bay, which is, I believe, Sunrise, it got totally destroyed. 4 of the apartments in the other building, they lost their roof and got everything. All the water came and everything got destroyed. They had holes in the roof. Fortunately, we didn't have any holes in our roof, but we did have the water come in.
But were you didn't know what was going to happen? Were you scared that the whole thing would really come crumbling down over your ears because you're on the second floor here?
Yep. Not only that, but I was sitting here. I had my little dog. She was sitting with me. She wouldn't move. If I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, she was within 6
scared.
inches. Oh, yeah. I was scared. And we'd come back and sit down in the chair, and she'd sit with me. But during the course of the night, it must have been, 11 o'clock, there was a huge bang. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't realize what it was till the next day. But if you can see a huge dent in my metal fence there.
Oh, yeah.
All the tiles from the building next door were flying off, and one of the tiles hit that fence, and I'm saying, even with hurricane impact windows, I suspect that it would have shattered. The glass wouldn't have come out, but it would have shattered the window or sliding glass door. But that was like, got your attention.
Yeah.
I spoke to a Danish hotel owner here, Lisbeth from Bellchapel Inn, and during the hurricane, she saw a bunch of birds flying around until she realized that it was tiles from a roof.
Well, I couldn't see those, but I did have a bit of a shocker because my friend called and said, we're going to get a little bit break and check around. You'll have about 20 minutes break, see what's happening. So I literally went to my front door, which I'd kept open the whole evening, by the way. And
you kept open?
The front door was open, and I went out and I looked in the patio and I saw.
Why was it open?
Because there was no wind coming from that direction. It was all coming from the north at the time.
Okay.
But I looked and I noticed that the parking lot was beginning to fill up with water.
Oh my God.
And they had warnings of potential surge. And then I cleaned out upstairs pitot tubes, and then I saw that the drainage was filling up. So I stuck my head around the corner, got a face full of salt water, believe it or not, from the rain. It must have picked up, from the ocean and everything else. Yeah. And I said, but I've got to face it. So I waited until it calmed down. I went down, cleaned that out. And fortunately, we didn't have any surge where we are. But across there, we had a boat. It's about 6-8 feet up onto the grass from the marina there. But that was...
Wow, walking around after the storm must have been so weird because of all the damage and things not supposed to be like a boat on the lawn or...
Exactly. Not only that, but bear in mind all the trees, all the leaves, all the everything was torn down. Then compound that once I was able to things calm down enough and the streets were cleared slightly, I was able to go and check on some friends of mine, and including Elizabeth. I drove out, and first thing I did is I found some ice, and I took some ice by Bell Channel Inn, and I said, well, it was just Presley was there, and and another couple of friends of mine. We sat there, and he said, we might as well have a drink. So I had ice. I said, let's have a drink. So try to get back as quickly as you can to some semblance of normalcy.
In fact, Elizabeth told me that story as well.
Yeah.
That you showed up.
Yeah. Well, I actually eventually I had a generator, and I was able to operate 4 units, including I was making ice every day. And the apartment next door was empty at the time, so I made ice in that freezer as well. So every day I was supplying Elizabeth with ice until her pile came on. Fortunately, it came on very quickly.
As many smaller islands around the world, Grand Bahama has a thing they call island time. You know, where they don't really look that much at their watch as we do in our part of the world.
Well, I was born in the Bahamas, but having been in business as many years as I have, it's very difficult to operate on island time. I operate on real time. And so this morning I had a meeting I'd set up on Saturday with a contractor at 9:30. And I was running around because I was a bit late because of my wife had hurt her foot, so I was walking the dog. I said, I've got to go now, and okay, well, see you later. And I rushed for my meeting, and I got there, and it was 9:45. And I thought, oh, goodness. Well, the contractor was there who I had the meeting with. I said, where's the carpenter? He said, well, he was supposed to be here at 9:30. So he's on island time, but we're in real time because we're the business people. Anyway, he eventually did show up. I'd left by then, but I've always been amazed at island time, and only a matter of interest. I found that some of the worst people that operate on island time are visitors that weren't born here, but are living here. We have a girlfriend from South America who is usually, if not always, at least an hour late. And they operate in real time. She's a former business person and diplomat, but she has her own agenda. And I have another friend of mine who is Bahamian, but was schooled in the United Kingdom. Her father was English, but she operates on her own hour behind schedule kind of thing. But that's island life, I guess, what you call it.
Have you noticed Roger's English? He doesn't sound Bahamian. It's almost too English. And that has given him some problems over the years, even though he's 3rd generation Bahamian.
Actually, it's really funny because I was transferred here and I'd opened a trust company. And back in those days, I spoke terribly, terribly proper English, we'll say. And absolutely. And but of course, I'm not just a Bahamian. I'm 3rd generation Bahamian. And I went out putting ads and hiring people to be trained to get involved with the bank and the trust company and other aspects. And people resented the fact that I was running this company. And where was I from? And I said, I'm from the Bahamas. And, yeah, but man, which part of the Bahamas are you from? I said, well, I'm from Nassau, New Providence, the capital of the Bahamas. Yeah, but you sound like no Bahamian to me, I said, well, I understand I may not sound like a Bahamian, but I'm 3rd generation. After having immigration called on me and producing my passport, the whole 9 yards, they were calling me a foreigner. Then they started calling me an alien because even though I was born in the Bahamas, I was alien to Grand Bahama. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
The local government of Grand Bahama has a lot of plans of how to develop the island over the next coming years.
Yes. The government of the day seems to have some really progressive ideas. And in the past, for whatever reason, Freeport has never been permitted to enjoy its potential. And I should extend that to not just Freeport, but to Grand Bahama. And in the past, even though if we were just left alone, we were able to survive, and we made a lot of progress, but it almost like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And then once we got hit by Hurricane Francis and Jean in 2004, we had a lot of problems since then. A lot of people were underinsured or not insured or whatever they were. So a lot of buildings, you drive around today and see buildings that have not recovered, will not recover, because there's no money to fix them. But the government of the day seems to have a better concept of what to do with Grand Bahama, and they're looking at Grand Bahama as in the future. And that includes, rather than market Grand Bahama as a sea, sun, and sand resort only, and there are thousands of those, people are getting past sea, sun, and sand vacations. They want to go on an experience. I mean, we have the diving experiences here, as you know, but we also have some excellent eco tours here. That fort is run by a friend of mine, actually I've known for a very long time, Erica Gates. But the government wants to market the eastern end of the island as an eco-tourism area. Mm-hmm. The center, where the Freeport area, they want to market as technology and various other things to do with that IT and upgrade the hotels existing here in Freeport and to develop in that area. And they've got people in place to do it. Out of 39 seats in the House of Parliament, the government of the day has 35. And of the representatives of Grand Bahama, all 5 seats in Grand Bahama went to the FNM in the last election.
So I'll be able to see the difference when I come back in maybe 5 or 10 years time.
You will see the difference in 5 years, and 10 years. Hopefully, we will have the remarkable increase in things in 10 years versus the destruction we've had over the last 10 years.
That's nice. Then I have an excuse to come back because I really like it here.
Well, don't wait 10 years.
No. But, yeah. I got a work to see as well, but I'm definitely coming back because I really, really like it here. And I've been here almost 3 weeks now, and I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Well, we that live here love it.
Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com, best price guaranteed.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe in iTunes or the podcast app on your smartphone. You can see pictures, watch videos, and read much more on the RadioVagabond.com. Palais can be reached for interviews and public speaking gigs on mail at theRadioVagabond.com.
In the next episode, we meet another of the not-so-young locals.
I've been to various places, and I'm always anxious to get home.
So this is home.
This is my home.
His name is Len, and he came to the island 48 years ago.
When I first got here, I thought I'll never leave.
Wow. And he's another great guy that I'm happy I got to meet in Grand Bahama. You can meet him too in the next episode and learn a lot about what it's like to live here and be a witness to all the changes of the island.
If someone was living here, we'll say 20 years ago, and came back today and saw what it is, you could cry, to be honest.
My name is Palle Bo. Thanks for listening. See ya.
Cinnamon, no.